Hello, everyone. Thank you for tuning in to our latest webinar, 100 Days Until the Election, Getting Young People to the Polls. My name is Dara. I'm on the Phone to Action team, here to walk through a few housekeeping items before we get started. Next slide. To begin, if you're having any sort of audio issues, please feel free to let us know in the chat section on the panel, and a member of the team will come to your rescue. Second, a recording of this webinar will be up following conclusion, so please feel free to visit our website to view that and share it with any peers that you like. Please also submit any questions in the questions section of the panel. They'll be passed along to our moderator, Russ, and will be asked at the end of the webinar. And similarly, with audio issues, if you're having any wider tech issues, please request some help in the chat section and a member of the team will be right with you. And finally, feel free to tweet or post about this webinar with the hashtag 100daysGOTV, or use it to follow along any discussions or threads on social media pertaining to the topic. And with that, let's hand over to our moderator, Russ Fagley, to take it from here. Thank you, everybody.
Hey, everyone. Good morning. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm super excited to be moderating this great webinar and panel discussion today. We are about almost 100 days out from the 2020 general election. And everyone, take a breath. It'll be here. One of my favorite quotations in politics is a week is a long time in politics. So it's 100 days, ton of time to get your program going if it's not already going. Ton of time to hit those goals, hit those numbers that you've staked out for your GOTV program. And we're going to have some time today to dig in on all those things. So I'll just introduce myself real quickly. I'm, for those of us who haven't met, I'm Russ Fagley. I'm the Vice President for the West Coast at Phone to Action. I manage a portfolio of mostly West Coast clients and partnerships, and work with all the different teams at Phone to Action. So want to dig in real quickly here, and let's talk about our agenda. So I'm going to give a brief overview of the election for those of you who maybe just realized a few minutes ago that it is only 100 days away. We're going to hear from HeadCount. We have Emily Gibbs, who's going to say hi in a moment and talk about what HeadCount is going on. Also coming is NextGen America, and Olivia Chow is here with us to talk about what NextGen is doing to meet young voters on their terms. And then Ali Jones from UCSF is also on the panel as well to talk about how UCSF is navigating the election and COVID-19 crisis. And then hopefully we'll have some time for some great Q&A as well. So that's our agenda. And let's go ahead and introduce our panel.
Hi, I'm Emily Gibbs. I'm the Managing Director of HeadCount. We are a nonpartisan nonprofit, started in 2004. Mostly we started with the idea of registering voters at concerts and festivals. So it's a really cool idea. We were born in the jam band space. If there's any Grateful Dead fans out there, that's like our bread and butter, how we got started. Cut to 2020, we're working with massive pop stars and tons of different artists and influencers on meeting fans where they are and activating groups of fans to get out the vote, register to vote, get their friends to vote and all that. My roots are actually super grassroots organizing. I used to run community gardens. So I love, getting my hands dirty and actually doing the nitty gritty. I actually used to work in DC in technology with Phone to Action. And here I am trying to get all the young people registered for the 2020 election.
Awesome. Thanks so much. It's great to have you, Emily. Our next panelist.
Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for taking the time to join. My name's Olivia, she, her, hers. I'm based out of California, the Bay Area. I'm also a DC expat. I work at NextGen America. We are a PAC, primarily, formally started as NextGen Climate, trying to push for pro-climate policy and finding that a lot of the elected officials needed to be harder and better on climate policy, right? And then in the legacy and the history of NextGen Climate, really looked to a lot of young people that were passionate about climate, wanted to make a difference, wanted to make a change. And one of the things that was missing in the climate justice movement was electoral politics and getting really smart about campaigns, getting really smart about the elected officials that we have in place, right? And so, you know, we're pushing that since I think 2013, 2014, and you know, with 2016, we just made official what we already knew, that you can't talk about environmental justice without talking about all the other social justice issues, right? Of like environmental racism, around immigrant rights, around just all the other intersections of our lives. So we've become NextGen America. We are still in some key battleground states, just helping young people, you know, not only get registered to vote and vote, but also recognizing that their vote is tied to the things that they live day to day, that they're super passionate about, and really excited to talk about our lives in the next 100 days to really make a difference in November. I would say my background before coming to NextGen America is that I used to be a field and community activist within the Asian American community, but again, lives are intersectional, realized that there was a missing capacity in our organizing, particularly when it came to digital and tools, and that's why I'm so excited around this conversation with Phone to Action. So thanks.
Awesome, thanks, Olivia. Wonderful to have you. And our final panelist.
Hi, everyone. I'm Allie Jones. I manage the advocacy program at UC San Francisco. Our UCSF Advocates is our community of our students, our staff, faculty, our alumni, community members, who all stand up for values and policies fundamental to UCSF's mission of advancing health worldwide, which we do through patient care, education, research, and of course, public service, which is really where our Get Out the Votes efforts come through. We connect our advocacy community with legislators on issues that affect our work and people. We host advocacy trainings and educate our community on opportunities to make a difference using best practices. And the University of California is committed to civic engagement, both on campus and in the communities that we serve. And I really look forward to sharing more about our campus's efforts with you later on today.
Great, thank you so much, Allie. I want to move on just to talk a little bit about the 2020 election by the numbers. It's a big election, what can I say? 435 members of the House. We have up for election 34 senators. There's 11 gubernatorial races as well, so a lot of statewide elections and opportunities. And then, of course, thousands of state and local lawmakers nationwide. We elect a lot of individuals. There's a lot of dog catchers up for election this year, and so it is more than just the presidency as well. I wanted to flag a couple of key 2020 election dates. There are opportunities for you and the organization that you might be associated with to get involved between now and early November. It's not just November 3rd. The first sort of date here to flag, I actually want to have Olivia talk for a moment about National Vote by Mail Day of Action, if you can, Olivia.
It's going to be amazing. Everyone should join us. We have a lot of partner organizations joining us, and also Vote Save America is going to be a partner for National Vote by Mail Day of Action. The main thought here is we want to make sure that everyone is prepared to be able to vote as safely as possible, especially with the global pandemic going on. So helping inform a lot of our voters around how to request their vote by mail ballots.
Awesome, thank you. A couple other dates, mid and late August, you have the Democratic and Republican national conventions. These are going to be increasingly online, digital conventions, given COVID crisis. So we're going to hear from Emily and from the rest of the panelists on that shift to digital. That'll be a recurring theme you hear throughout this webinar. And then, of course, September 22nd, National Voter Registration Day, October 24th, Vote Early Day. These are great opportunities for engagement, for messaging. These are good times for you to make sure you're in someone's inbox saying, hey, get your voice heard. Make sure you are participating in the election. Other important thing I just want to note real quick is that, digital advocacy is booming right now. The COVID crisis has meant that there's a shift from a lot of the kind of offline organizing that is the bread and butter of general election year organizing has come online. On the phone to action side, we're seeing a massive increase in conversion rates, whether it's around federal, state, or local advocacy. People are plugged in right now and they want to help, they want to do good. So if you are debating whether or not to reach out to folks digitally right now or to try and find your audience, now is the time. People are plugged in. We're seeing big boosts to traffic across the phone to action platform as well. We're going to talk a little bit about a phone to action offering called the Civic Action Center, which is our awesome suite of get out the vote and voter engagement tools. We're seeing traffic to our Civic Action Centers just explode right now. People are really tuning in. And as someone who's done quite a bit of electoral work in the past, I'm sort of used to like Labor Day being the time that people tune in, and we're seeing people tune in a bit earlier this year. It's really fantastic. And as been referenced, this is a very different election. The COVID crisis is going to be changing how America votes. We're going to see changes in turnout patterns. We're going to see changes in vote by mail approaches and how states manage all of that. You're going to hear from our panelists on that as well. But young voters are super important. And the stat that I think really still blows me away is 69% of young people didn't vote in 2018. The most recent midterm election. 60% have actually never been asked to register. And we've got some of the experts with us today who are bringing those numbers down potentially in 2020. So with that, I want to turn over to Emily to talk about what HeadCount is doing in the election.
Awesome. Thank you, Russ, for that great overview of what's happening. We have about 100 days and it's crazy. It's coming. So like I said before, HeadCount has been around since 2004. We primarily have actually been in the field. HeadCount is so grassroots. We have always prided on ourselves. Our biggest asset has always been our team leaders and volunteers around the country that set up at festivals and concerts that we set up for them with a clipboard, registering people in person. COVID, obviously, we had to shut down all of our field operations, which was incredibly, difficult for us and for our thousands of volunteers, because this is the year that gets them most excited. But with that, so we've had to completely shift over to digital, and a couple other things that came along the way. We've really shifted over to digital in the past 2 years, and this year we've just ramped up exponentially as well. So I think about when COVID sort of was starting, vote from home became a massive conversation. So we did about two things. The first thing we did was we launched a change.org petition to get vote by mail and vote from home in all 50 states. So we've got about 150,000 signatures on that so far. That's actually boomed off way more than we thought it would, which is great. And the second thing we wanted to do, one thing we're really keyed in on is that all 50 states are incredibly different. And so we created, I think it was the first week that there was the mandatory stay at home in New York City, we created a whole new web page, on the HeadCount. It's one of the main pages where you can actually look at all different 50 states and request your absentee ballot and also read the different rules for all states. And as they change, a news article comes out about Alabama changing or some state changing what's going on with vote at home. We've got a team of voter engagement specialists updating the website. So that when people go to our site, they can see, okay, I'm from this state. Do I need an excuse? How do I manage this crisis when I don't want to go out to the polls? So we're staying up 100% on top of that. we're also, really promoting vote from home as a safe option, and keenly keeping aware of the national conversation. It is shifting a lot, so I urge anyone who is working on vote from home to fact check yourself daily, because it is changing daily, and dedicate a team to it, because it is tough. I mean, the news reporters can't even keep up with it, so we're trying to keep up with it as best we can. So that's a huge push for us. And another thing we've done, with education, and in response to the murders of George Floyd, and then the conversations about systemic racism coming out, we've really started dedicating a lot of our resources to this campaign we call United We Vote. When folks started going out to protests, we were getting hundreds of requests from people. What can I do? I want to be a part of this. Can I register voters out at a protest? It's how I want to contribute. So we quickly printed QR codes, got people trained up, and sent people out, as sort of this, and we actually had them go to Phone to Action Civic Action Center. So not only are people at protests able to register to vote, they're looking up if they're registered, and they're also finding out their polling location. So it's like a 3-in-1. You're getting it good. And what we've done is we've actually done QR codes as well as the text-in codes with Phone to Action. And we've tested out the size you need to be 6 feet away from each other. So that's what we're doing. And we're currently working right now with local organizers that are, setting up protests to sort of get the word out there, so that as they're communicating, they're also helping register folks to vote, because that's a really important piece to all of this. And another process we've launched, and there's so many different projects, but one thing we launched in June that we're actually continuing efforts in, and Phone to Action's been a huge help on, is our Pride page. So we've always in the field, we've always gone to Pride events. Last year, actually, our Phone to Action account rep, Matt Santoro, came with us to San Francisco. We registered voters. We were on stage, doing a call to action to get people logged in. But what we realized is that there's a big education gap that we needed to sort of bridge for folks. And that's, for the LGBTQA plus community, there's a lot of, different barriers to entry that folks may face as they're wanting to vote, and, ranging from ID laws to a higher rate of experiencing homelessness if you're a trans individual and all that. So we actually created a Vote with Pride page that kind of houses that information. If your ID does not match your gender identity, that may cause different issues. So Vote from Home is a great option for that. And the different sort of, if you're facing this, here's how we can help. And with that, another shameless plug for Phone to Action, we also have a Civic Action Center hooked up to that Pride page. And one thing we are so thankful for is up until about 2 weeks ago, you had to put a title, and that they only had Mr., Miss, Mrs., and another one, which was non-inclusive. And as we've been reaching out to our LGBTQA plus influencers and artists, they were hesitant to join us because it was a non-inclusive title. Well, Phone to Action worked really hard, removed that, and now actually today we are launching this Vote with Pride page with Haley Kiyoko, who's a very prominent lesbian artist, influencer. Really excited to see how that goes, because we really want to be the voice and sort of help people get their friends and family and whoever they know, sort of registered through this page. So we're really thankful for that, and that's just one of the many ways we are really hyper focused on the inclusivity of our voter registration efforts. Should we go to the next slide? Awesome. So second piece on this, I've talked a little bit about this, but Civic Action Centers that we've been making through Phone to Action, the new launch is absolutely beautiful. We have about 4 different types of ways we're doing this. So the Civic Action Center we absolutely love, because you can not only customize it, you can register people to vote, verify voter, your voter registration, look up your information, your elected officials, all of that just in one place. And we were supposed to go on at least 50 tours this year, be at a couple hundred festivals, and actually work with Broadway plays as well. And what we've done is we've actually partnered with all of them in a digital way. And we've actually created unique civic action centers for all of our partners. We've got a festival challenge going on right now. All the festivals are going to be posting out. That's been wildly successful. Second thing we're doing with artists, we're sort of using the Civic Action Center and calling it Get Vote Ready. We have a ton of our artist partners actually auctioning off a private video chat with them. So Camila Cabello was the first one to launch. And the lucky winner of that, whoever, logs into the Civic Action Center, will actually win a video chat with Camilla. So we're still using the artists to sort of work with this, and calling it Vote Ready. And the Civic Action Center has been great for that. Super customizable, can share it out. And one of the biggest ways that we, not only by being really inclusive and making sure our language is accurate, but we also work with our influencers really side by side, because we might not be able to communicate with a Haley Kiyoko or a Camila Cabello fan well, but they sure can. Which sort of, I'll go out of line here, which sort of brings me to my next point of social media. So all of our artist partners and influence partners, like the festivals, are, they've got their massive influence, right? And, of course, we wish we could be there in the stadiums with them. But what's actually pretty unique about this time is, maybe however many thousands of people can be in a stadium show to see Ariana Grande play, but she actually has millions of people that follow her on social media. So her social media reach is actually, in some ways, reaching more people than us having a team with with clipboards out in the field. So this shift has, while it's been really hard for us, I believe that at the end of this, we're actually gonna have a bigger reach, because our massive influencers are sharing on their Instagram, on their Snapchat, on their Facebook, and really reaching people where they are. One of our most successful campaigns this year was Billie Eilish filmed a video of herself saying, "Hey, swipe up and take action," with HeadCount, and it was a phone to action center. And people felt compelled in that moment, especially young people with these pop stars, like, oh, I need to do this. And Billie Eilish has always been a spokesperson for, she pre-registered when she was 17 and made that very vocal. So people are really in tune with what those artists are saying, and trying to get, we sort of hook them in with the artists, and then we, on the flip side, we're actually doing all of our get out the vote messaging. So with text messaging through phone to action, we text people by state on deadlines and important things to remember. We also do classic email marketing, and everyone who enters our system is then getting personalized messages. And the last thing I'll say about text message, which is what we're working on, is, once we have those people hooked into our system, we really want to make sure that they're actually reaching out to their friends. So we're experimenting with this concept called vote tripling with text messaging. As people opt in, it then reminds them to remind their 3 friends that they told us that they would then get them registered to vote, because we're trying to sort of triple the impact of everyone we talk with. And it's crazy, and it's really exciting, and more partners and more artists are coming to us now than I think ever before in any presidential election year. And we've had, Lizzo gave us a shout out the other day. So artists and influencers are interested, and we're very pleased to give them the platform to inform their fan base and get them involved for 2020. So it's really exciting.
That's awesome. Thanks, Emily, for that wonderful overview. And if you haven't had a chance, for folks who are tuned in, go to headcount.org right now, sign up, check it out, and take a look at all the different campaign pages and efforts going on. It's really impressive. Cool. Well, I'd like to pass the torch over to Olivia to talk about NextGen and NextGen's amazing focus on the youth vote.
Yeah, hi team. Really excited to talk about this. Might keep it somewhat short here to get to my favorite section is always the Q&A, but also if anyone wants to follow up on any of these questions, or I didn't do the explicit ask around if anyone wants to join us for National Vote by Mail Day of Action, feel free to email me. It's going to be olivia.chow@nextgenamerica.org. Cool, so I had talked about what NextGen America does. one of the things that we do is that we have 11 state teams for the 11 states that we are active in, right? And we had organizers, we had fellows, so we also were really struck by the global pandemic. We decided really early on to do right by not only our staff, but also our volunteers and also the people that we want to turn out to vote and keep everyone safe. So very early in March, we said we're going to no in-person voter contact, right, while we figure out what it is that's going on. So then we have all of this energy of these really amazing, outgoing, sociable organizers that we're used to just talking to anyone and everyone on college campuses or wherever young people are congregating, right? And we were trying to figure out, like, crap, we can't do the in-person stuff. What do we do now, right? We really, scaled up the text banks that we were doing. We scaled up the phone banking that we were doing. But again, just missing the sort of, if there's one theme here, part of it is meeting young people where they're at and meeting them at their needs. So, one of those things that, we were trying to talk through and replicate was just with the pandemic, this is an issue that's hitting all of us, right? And it's also spurring up a lot of conversations around issues that people are feeling impacted by, right? Not just the health, physical health concerns around the pandemic, but also what sheltering in place is doing for mental health, right? If we're talking about inclusivity, what it looks like for LGBTQ youth that might not have supportive families, but they are stuck in a house together, right? So a lot of our organizers who are used to doing educational events around issues in voting on campuses or in neighborhoods, they were doing all of that online, right? We started hosting Zoom parties, anything from talking to a mental health professional around coping mechanisms to recurring yoga sessions, right? We also did a phone bank and baking party where folks were, trying out different recipes as we were dialing into some of our younger voters in our states. I also would love to share this research with everyone here on this call. If you go to nextgenamerica.org/research, we did a good handful of polling for our young vote audience, especially folks that are, highly progressive, are with us on the issues, but they just don't turn out to vote, right? And if we're talking about 100 days now until the election, we're talking about turnout. Like, what does it take to get folks to turn out, right? And we've talked a lot about, meeting people where they're at online on their cell phones to make sure that they have the information to register vote and also turn out to vote. But also, some of the conversations that we're having in NextGen is the persuasion of how to talk to people to really get folks to really trust and believe that their vote matters, especially when congressional approval is so low, right? And so some of the things that we're finding, we're talking about, again, the issues. And one of the things that we're super excited about with our use of phone to action is the Find My Candidates feature in the Civic Action Center, and using that as a means of providing ballot guides for folks, right? When we were in the field and when we were having conversations with young people, a lot of folks were just feeling like, I don't know, I got to do more research. I got to figure out what these candidates are about, right? So one of our key things that we do as NextGen is that we do some of that research for them. We pull from, previous speeches, from their campaign websites, from any articles that they publish, which is what has been their stances, what have been some of their previous votes on the issues that young people care about the most. How do we actually know what it is that young people care about the most? We do this pledge to vote, right? And so, just a simple sort of web form that tells people by signing this, you are committing to vote in the November elections, right? Seems like a pretty small ask, but in 2018, when they ran an experiment around pledges to vote versus just generic petitions, saw a 3.7% increase of voter turnout, saw a 5.6% voter turnout increase specifically for folks who haven't voted before, right? Particularly thinking about the really young voters that are just turning 18 and this be their first election or their first vote fast, really key. Also, Emily talked a little about vote tripling before. We're also, using vote tripling because we know that meeting young people where they're at is also having young people be the messengers to other young people. Right, so how it is to prompt some of the folks that are signing up, pledging to vote, that are passionate about these things, to actually have conversations with their friends and peers and getting their friends and peers to register or vote as well. So as part of our online form, folks can see it if you go to nextgenamerica.org/pledge. You know, you fill it out, we ask you what issues are you passionate about, and then towards the bottom we ask you like, hey, who are 3 friends that you're going to reach out to and get them to pledge to vote as well. And then I think the last bullet here around digital outreach had already kind of touched about it. A little bit of, you know, not only the global pandemic pivot where we don't have in-person options, so we are communicating with folks on digital, but, you know, even before when we did have in person, knowing just the sort of people are online at all random hours of the day. Young people are constantly online, right? And a lot of people are looking online for their sources of news and information and research. So, you know, even when we start, you know, knock on wood and all those things, even when we start being able to be like in person and do some of that canvassing again, folks definitely need to think about their digital presence and their digital actions to just be as effective as possible. I think the next slide. We just wanted to give a fun example of just digital actions don't have to look like the other digital actions that you're seeing that folks are solitarily doing, a like phone-based dialing to their call list, right? Or they're texting random folks. A lot of what folks were missing in, you know, when shelter in place started happening was folks were missing a space to come together and be in community, right? When, you know, we were first kind of locking down on our in-person voter contact, that also meant a lot of the like events and rallies that we were really building towards and really excited about. We were part of the Youth Climate Strike movement and a lot of the coalitions of folks that were trying to, planning to engage around the Earth Day, right, to celebrate Earth Day and engage folks on a conversation around climate justice and voting, right? But unfortunately, you know, in April, should not congregate in person. So instead what we did is we found that a lot of folks were, Animal Crossing had just come out and a lot of folks were seeking refuge in this really adorable space where you're able to build your own island and invite friends over. So like we basically set this up like a house party model, right? That we had island hosts that would host the party and invite 7 or 8 folks to their island. And it was decked out as this virtual Earth Day rally where folks got to have some of that experience, talk about voting, take these screenshots that are really adorable. And so one of the things that we wanted to share here was like, and again, meeting young people where they're at, also finding the spaces that young people are already building communities in and engaging folks where they are there. I think that's the last bit of my slide.
Great, thanks so much, Olivia. I'm going to kick it now to Ali to talk about what UCSF is up to.
Great, happy to close this out. So I wanted to first just give everyone a quick overview of UCSF, so you know the kind of scale that we're dealing with here. So we are one of 10 wonderful campuses within the University of California system. We're unique in being the only campus focused on graduate and professional education, as well as being solely focused on health. We have 4 schools of medicine, dentistry, nursing, and pharmacy, and we also have about 19 different graduate programs. We provide healthcare in the Bay Area and beyond, and we're ranked as one of the top hospitals in California and nationwide, and we also advance health through research, and one of the top recipients, public recipients of the National Institute of Health grants. So some of these ideas I'll be sharing with you today help give you a sense of what it might be like to move, get out the vote efforts within a large organization that has many different interests and audiences. So the way we kind of kicked things off was launching a voter engagement working group on campus. And this includes representatives from all of our major campus departments to really develop a unified goal each election cycle and also have a universal look and feel that promotes civic engagement across the UCSF, our campus, and also within our health system. So for the general election, we're developing customizable templates for signage and outreach that various departments can tailor for their constituencies and distribute in the ways that they know best. Our goal is to unify these efforts, but also allow for some flexibility to meet the various audience needs. And then we also plan to track our engagement by using unique QR codes that direct people back to our UCSF Votes webpage and our online voter registration tool. Next slide, please. So our goal this year is really, as the panelists have shared, is to adapt our strategy given the pandemic, but also kind of look at this, if there is a positive light, as an opportunity, to kind of leverage the challenges that we're facing and align our goals with public health and get out the vote. So we'll be really leaning heavily on promoting voting by mail, reducing potential exposures at the polls. We're very lucky that our governor has mandated that all California residents who are registered to vote will be receiving an absentee ballot. So we'll stress the importance of not just to update your voter registration, but to do so to make sure that your address is up to date so you can receive your ballot and vote from home. And then we'll also be promoting, returning your ballots via mail versus, going to a polling location. Again, just reducing exposure. And then leaning into our digital advocacy efforts, everything is moved online. We'll be doing digital signs, all campus emails to our 30K plus listservs, social media posts, using profile banners, putting language in e-signatures about how to have a healthy and safe voting experience and how to register. Doing online events, all of our in-person events that we typically would do are moving online around ballot initiative forms, sharing information about what's on the ballot so people get more excited and prepared to vote. Even developing like Zoom backgrounds, with get out the vote language, some of the ideas. And then of course we do have some in-person opportunities because we have our, very skilled health system. So putting flyers on campus, posters, places that patients and providers and people coming into our hospitals and clinics can see and get more aware about upcoming deadlines. This year, we're really starting to look at engaging our patients, since that's, again, kind of our primary in-person opportunity. So maybe including some language around getting up, registering with a QR code in our patient after visit summaries. We have many telehealth visits right now, and so having Zoom backgrounds with a QR code that a patient could scan and register to vote right there. Having scannable, badges that our providers could wear that send people to, our site to register. And then just having this be kind of a prompt for providers to discuss with their patients the importance of voting and the connection to health. So if you're interested, our website is ucsf.edu/vote. That's where all of our current campaigns are. And then the general advocacy program, if you want to learn more, is at ucsf.edu/advocacy. We have a number of other active advocacy campaigns right now through Phone to Action that you're welcome to join us in too.
I just want to say real quickly, I love the strategy and idea behind placing that messaging, those updates in places like, e-signatures, on collateral and receipts. Allie, I think your program does a really good job highlighting that actually organizations are communicating with people all the time, and there's tons of opportunities to embed those important messages in some of those routine communications. We probably think of it as, oh, it's just a signature. Do people really click on that? Do people notice? And people do. I mean, this is communications they're receiving. I love that approach.
Yeah, and part of the idea behind this working group is, our various departments have various ways of communicating internally, and, having someone that they trust communicate with them about the importance of registering to vote and the connection to health, especially this year, will be much more meaningful than receiving a random email from me or from, someone outside of who they normally communicate with. And so leaning on our kind of various departments to go to them as the experts has really been key on this, and not presume that we know, how to engage everyone holistically, but having this kind of unified message that then can be tailored and distributed out has been really effective for us.
That's great. Thanks, Allie, for all of that. I love the program, and another great example of that shift from offline to online, given the current state of things. I want to go ahead and just pull in some key takeaways before shifting to Q&A. As we've noted, young folks are a key target in 2020, and they're going to be making up an increasing percentage of the electorate. Vote by mail is increasingly going to be vital, especially given COVID crisis. And as a result of that same crisis, voting rules are going to be changing. States are going to be making decisions that change the plan. And so thinking about how you, as a part of an organization, or maybe you're the GOTV person at your organization, thinking about how you're getting that information and staying up to date is really key. And just a quick reminder, your organization does have a role to play, providing voting information, helping people to register to vote, facilitating that registration. Registering to vote works a little bit differently depending upon your geography. I always pick on New Hampshire as like not yet noticing the internet is there, but they'll get there eventually. I promise. Go Granite State. But registering to vote online is an option for a lot of folks, and then getting that information about early voting as well. Your organization can be really helpful and impactful here. And Vote Action can help as well. We've got, as mentioned, these great suite of tools called the Civic Action Center. People can learn which candidates are up for election. They can register to vote, check their registration status. They can find polling locations and get that vote by mail information. This is all in one place. We have a great team here that's been building this tool and really updating it every day. We're thinking constantly and downright obsessively about how to get more people to the polls. This election is so important. And so if there is interest in that Civic Action tool, please, let us know. And then of course, Vote Early Day is coming up. If you haven't been to voteearlyday.org, please check it out. I'm really excited that Vote Action is very much a part of Vote Early Day, along with some of the organizations that you've heard from here. Definitely check this website out if you haven't had the chance yet. So let's get to Q&A. If folks do have to run real quickly, if you have any questions about the Civic Action Center or Phone to Action, don't hesitate to shoot me an email or find me on LinkedIn. But want to get to Q&A with our amazing panelists. The first question that came in, and by the way, shout out to the audience for these great questions. Right? They've been coming in throughout the session. This is good stuff. So the first question is, and for all three of you, which is, what are the main challenges in doing 100% virtual GOTV education and sort of planning those campaigns? So what are those challenges? How did you tackle them? And I guess I'll maybe start with Emily to answer that.
Great. Thank you. That's a great question. So I'd say the biggest challenge is, we being such a strong field team. I mean, we interview anyone who becomes what we call a team leader, and we know they're they're spunky, they know how to communicate, they'll really hone in on people and really ask questions. And there's that personal touch and that personal connection that we believe really inspires voting and really grows community that we don't really get now. And that to me is the biggest challenge, right? If someone, as an example for, if someone is, previously convicted of a felon and lives in a specific state, our teams are trained on the ground to know how to have those tough conversations and know how to really bridge the gap. If someone says, well, I can't vote, then we're like, we've trained them on really dealing with issues of voter suppression and how to walk someone through the different issues they're facing. So for us to, make assumptions about an audience and then try to tailor our conversations, I think is extremely challenging in a digital space when we're for so long relying on those person-to-person connections. So I think it's not having that, trying to make sure that everything we're doing is extremely inclusive without being too much information, but like hitting all the points and figuring out for what campaign is what information is important, I think is really tough when you can only make assumptions about your audience in some ways. You don't really know them because you're not with them in the room or at the festival. So I think for me, that's been a really big challenge.
Olivia, I don't know if you want to weigh in on challenges there as well.
I would say some of the challenges is like you're just fighting for attention, right? Fighting is a hard stretch, right? But I think so many people are used to the internet being so like instant, right? That they want direct answers to a lot of things, right? And so I would say one key thing to really think about and look about is like the flows of which people get in contact with your organization and how quickly can you have the touch points of getting someone from an initial sign up to like onboarded onto your email list, like getting some welcome text messages, having conversation with organizers on staff. If you have organizers on your staff, like where can you go from someone just having an initial interest to like you're developing a relationship with them. And I think the other thing we had talked about too was like sometimes there is a lot of conversation around voting just because so many states are so particular with all their rules. Again, we're dealing in an environment where like fake news is a thing that people say and just accept. We're dealing with an environment of like really low congressional approval, right? And so like having those harder conversations is a little bit more difficult in a really open space where you're used to a directness and a quickness, right? So going back towards trying to just use digital as a tool to build the relationship and build the relationship so you have trust to have those conversations.
That's great. Allie, can you talk a little bit about like challenges that you're seeing, and also you made a great point earlier about different audiences and trusted messengers. So maybe especially if there's any points around that that you've encountered.
Sure. Yeah. I think our in-person outreach in previous elections would get to the people that we couldn't reach digitally. So our challenge now is, well, how do we now get to those people that we normally would have reached in person, tabling outside of our health centers or tagging on to other, big events on campus. I'd say another challenge is just kind of the fun is missing, the fun factor, So we would do previous elections, we called it cinnamon rolls at the polls, on election day. If you'd come by our table and tell us you voted, you get a little sweet treat and pick up a UCSF votes button. And so we're really thinking about, well, how do we continue to, build goodwill and, engage our community positively and in a fun way when we're all, remote. Another challenge I think is, maybe doesn't need to be said, but just the priority here. Clearly there's a link between what's happening nationally right now and voting. But a lot of our providers who, have an opportunity to engage patients are understandably completely overwhelmed right now. And so, how do we kind of leverage this opportunity to be engaging with patients, but also not put the onus on our providers and one more thing that they need to do. So that's another challenge that we're having. But, the digital landscape is changing and we're rethinking how how we'll be engaging. So like the e-signature, we didn't do before and push this heavily, but that's just something that everyone's receiving where they don't need to join another Zoom call, to learn about something specific. And then we have a number of existing kind of town halls or updates campus-wide that we're thinking about, just including little quick plugs through those venues. So kind of going to the structures that are already in place in communications and then just kind of adding our messaging onto that. So without having to kind of redo and do separate events to get people to engage that way.
That's great. Thank you so much. I want to, for the next question, a couple of folks in the audience we're looking for some additional info on National Vote by Mail Day. So I'm wondering, Olivia, if you can maybe shout out that URL one more time and make sure folks know how to get in touch with you.
Yes, if I figure out unmuting myself in a timely fashion. If folks want to join us for National Vote by Mail Day of Action, feel free to email me, olivia.chow@nextgenamerica.org. We'll send you a little bit of the Google form that we have for partners to give more information about it. Also, we are still working on this, but might be unveiling it in the next couple of days, our Vote by Mail microsite, which has embedded the Phone to Action Civic Action Center. So we're really excited. What the day of action is going to look like is we're looking to contact 2.5 million young voters in our 11 states, just giving them information around, committing to vote by mail.
Thanks for that. Another question from the audience, and it's for Ali. You mentioned, bringing the fun back and thinking about, that as a challenge. Winter, fun or maybe stressful. Does UCSF have any plans for election night activities and messaging?
So we're working with our local Department of Elections and partnering with them. Oh, hello, friend. And partnering with them to think about how can we engage the broader community. So one idea we're exploring right now that we did, I think it was for the primary election, was on National Voter Registration Day. The Department of Elections had a cable car on wheels that they drove around to kind of key locations throughout San Francisco. And we had them stop at the end at UCSF, and just as kind of a visual way to remind people to register to vote. And, they had it decked out in red, white, and blue, and it was a very visual, fun event. And so we're thinking about like what other visuals like that can we do, even if people are, home, to get people excited and engaged. But yeah, we're still thinking about what exactly we can do on election day, and hopefully things may be different by then. Sadly, probably not. But we're kind of taking it day by day, and we'll be adapting our strategy depending on how things are looking in California.
I want to also throw that question to Emily as well. Are you thinking about sort of what day of or election night looks like for HeadCount in your audiences?
Yeah, so I think election night, usually we're just all together, but we, have our phones out sort of ready to answer any questions. I think for election night, probably no, it's more a little bit leading up to it. We're in talks with doing a lot of, since we do music, we're in talks with a lot of our different music partners and some other really prominent nonprofits, and doing some massive live streams with our top artists to just generate buzz around it. So we're looking to have like a virtual, as an organization, when we launched our Civic Action Center with Sophie Tucker, this like really awesome DJ, we'll do like Zoom parties with our staff, and some of our volunteers will do like Zoom dance parties, but that's just kind of our cultural thing we all are excited about. So we do have a couple of live stream concerts in the works, nothing set in stone yet, but we're figuring it out. We'll obviously share it with everyone, and Phone to Action. We'll probably have a call to action using you guys involved in that. So those are things in the works. Nothing set in stone yet, but stay tuned, because hopefully it can be a big buzz that we can get a lot of the country in. Because I know for us, the audience we're really talking to is people that miss like getting together in large crowds of people and listening to their favorite song. So we're going to try to do some replication of that, however much you can when you're on a video in your living room.
Right, we're all going to be Zooming. Zoom better stay online on election night. Okay, we've got about 2 minutes left, which means I think 2 questions left. The second to last question is actually for everyone. Are there any complementary campaigns that your organizations are running? I know we talk a lot about get out the vote, but anything else that you think of as being alongside, like a census engagement, things like that that you want to call out for the audience?
Sure, I'll start. So we've done a little bit of work on the census. We did a census partnership a couple of months ago, and are really keyed in on that. And we're actually right now like looking at some of the data and sort of let that determine what some of our campaigns are. I mean, it's all interconnected, right? And just recently we're looking at numbers of 79% of youth voters. COVID has changed their perspective and actually now realize the impact that local government has on their everyday life, which, that kind of data and information, just sort of looking at the data and reading it, I think will help us transform our GOTV campaign, just given what's currently going on. And it's all interconnected, and how you message around get out the vote.
Yeah, I would just retweet the interconnectedness. We were really active and following the lead of the movement for Black Lives, right, around the justice for George Floyd, around police brutality. Again, we saw this as being in service of our youth vote audience, our youth vote members, and folks that are passionate about the issues that they're impacted by day to day, right? So we engage in that. We engage in a variety of other advocacy efforts, like the coronavirus stimulus package, right? Like it's mind-boggling that we got a one-time $1,200 check, and it's been like months at this point, right? A lot of people are hurt right now, and especially when we talk about youth vote, we're talking about 18 to 35-year-olds. We're not only talking about like high school graduates or college graduates, like we are talking about millennials as well, and people that have families or young families that are again impacted by some of this issue. So a lot of times when we take on some of our issue advocacy campaigns, it's partly about educating folks about what's going on, especially what's going on in Congress, and how our current elected officials are either in service of us or not in service of us, right? And then the next action that we take is how we vote.
Yeah, at UCSF, we've also been promoting the census using kind of similar tactics to our Get Out the Vote campaign. And then we do have a number of other campaigns, a few of which are, UC wide, where UCSF is participating, like the COVID federal action for funding. And then also we just launched a campaign, I think it's winding down, but around following the Supreme Court decision on DACA to ask our congressional representatives to put permanent protections in place for our immigrant population. And so we have various campaigns like that we kind of always tie into other opportunities, but our Get Out the Vote effort and census, are kind of part of our public service efforts at UCSF.
Awesome. Well, unfortunately, we have hit time. I could sit here and talk about Get Out the Vote all day long. I want to thank everyone in the audience for tuning in today, and I also especially want to thank Emily, Olivia, and Ali for being such an awesome panel. We'll have to do this again in a maybe after the election. Lessons learned. What can we do for the election that's coming up right after 2020? Hope everyone has a wonderful day, and again, please don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions about phone to action. Thanks all.